Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Rain fell in fine tears on the city that evening. In the streets lit by street lamps, each drop seemed to amplify the tension in the air. Inside a chic downtown cafe, Clara Whitmore, a woman from an influential family known for her prejudices, observed the comings and goings with a wry smile. Her gaze fell upon a young black man, elegant and calm, who had just walked through the door. She knew exactly who he was, Derek Johnson, son of the chief of police, a man respected and feared for his rigor and integrity. Clara felt a dull, irrational anger as she watched Derek laughing with his friends. To her, his very existence seemed like a provocation. A treacherous idea took root in her mind, to harm him, not for any valid reason, but simply because of the color of his skin. With a mixture of cunning and cruelty, she discreetly slipped a small amount of drugs into the bag Derek had placed on a chair while he ordered a coffee. She knew this manipulation could destroy his life in an instant, and the thought filled her with a perverse satisfaction. Derek, unaware of the trap, picked up his bag and left the cafe a few minutes later. Clara watched him disappear into the night, her heart pounding with excitement and hatred. But she didn't know that every action has consequences, and that behind every facade of hatred can lurk a force far more powerful than any she thought she could control. That night, a simple bag would become the scene of an unexpected upheaval, a lesson in justice and revenge that no one could have foreseen. The next morning, Derek Johnson woke up with a strange feeling of unease. He had spent a quiet evening with his friends, and yet, something seemed out of place. He grabbed his bag and headed toward the private prep school he attended. He had barely stepped through the gate when two plainclothes officers were waiting for him, their faces impassive, their movements deliberate. "Derek Johnson?" asked one of them, taking a small box out of his pocket. "Yes, it's me." "What's going on?" asked Derek, surprised. Before he could react, they opened his bag and took out a small amount of drugs. Derek felt his heart stop. "It's not mine," he protested, his voice trembling, but the officers gave him no chance. The words, drugs, and arrest echoed through the air like a death knell. At that precise moment, Clara Whitmore watched the scene through the window of the neighboring jewelry store, a cruel smile on her lips. Her hatred seemed victorious, and she believed her little revenge had worked perfectly. But Derek didn't give up. His gaze darkened, determined to prove his innocence. He knew that a single mistake by the police could ruin his reputation and put his family in trouble, even if his father was the chief of police. At the same time, at headquarters, General Marcus Johnson, a respected and unyielding man, learned the news. His blood boiled. His son accused of drug possession? By whom? For what reason? His instincts as a father and a police officer dictated only one thing: to uncover the truth, and the truth would be merciless toward whoever had dared to frame Derek. Derek, handcuffed and escorted into the police vehicle, cast one last glance at Clara, who had just disappeared into the crowd. He didn't yet know that this simple look would trigger a chain of events that would turn his life, and the lives of all those who had underestimated him, upside down. Derek sat in the small office at the police station, his handcuffs removed but his face etched with anxiety. His father, General Marcus Johnson, had taken charge of the situation. Derek recounted every detail: the coffee, his friends, and the moment he had left his bag for a second. Marcus frowned. "This isn't just an accusation, son, someone has set you up. And I intend to find out who." Meanwhile, Clara Whitmore, confident of her triumph, carried on with her day as if nothing had happened. But beneath her facade of control, a growing tension was taking hold. In her mind, she couldn't ignore General Johnson's influence and determination. She had underestimated his vigilance. General Marcus discreetly contacted a few trusted officers. He wanted to analyze every piece of evidence, every surveillance video, and trace the chain of events back to its source. Very quickly, a picture began to take shape: the scene in the cafe, the security cameras, and above all, the suspicious gesture of a lone blonde customer watching Derek. Derek, for his part, felt torn between fear and anger. The shame of the unjust accusation burned within him, but he knew his father would find the truth. He began to remember seemingly insignificant details, the way Clara had smiled, the way she had picked up her bag before leaving. Each memory became a piece of the puzzle. That evening, Marcus and Derek met in the general's office. On the surveillance monitor, Clara's face appeared clearly as she placed the drugs in Derek's bag. Marcus clenched his fists. "She thought she could play with us," he murmured, his eyes full of anger. "She's going to regret it, Dad," replied Derek, his face determined. Miles away, Clara felt a shiver run down her spine. Something told her her perfect plan was about to crumble. But she wasn't ready to give up. She had prepared several backup plans, and the game was only just beginning. Marcus Johnson wanted to leave nothing to chance. Together with Derek, they devised a meticulous strategy to expose Clara Whitmore and clear the general's son's name. The idea was simple yet brilliant: let Clara believe her trap had worked, while simultaneously gathering irrefutable evidence of her guilt. Meanwhile, Clara continued to boast to her friends about her success. Unbeknownst to her, her every move had been recorded by the security cameras in the cafe and the surrounding area. Derek, under his father's watchful eye, had provided every detail of his schedule, his movements, and even the bag he had used. Every little clue became evidence for the authorities. A week passed. Clara was beginning to sense a slight tension in the air, but she refused to admit it. Her arrogance was her only armor. That evening, Marcus and Derek arranged a fake meeting. A so-called informant would help them figure out how the drugs were put in the bag. Clara, sensing an opportunity to sabotage Derek again, decided to insert herself into the scene. She had no idea she was falling into an even more cunning trap. The police, under the general's direct orders, had placed hidden cameras in the warehouse where she planned to operate. The moment she tried to tamper with the evidence or make her plan disappear, everything was filmed. When Marcus confronted Clara that evening, she felt trapped for the first time. "Clara Whitmore, you thought you could ruin my son's life, just because of the color of his skin," said Marcus, his voice icy but controlled. Clara stammered, surprised and frightened, realizing her entire plan had failed. She tried to deny it, but Derek and the officers present presented the evidence, the videos, the witnesses, and the recordings of the incriminating conversations. Every word she had spoken and every gesture she had made trapped her a little more. General Marcus stepped forward, his gaze piercing. "You thought you could play games with us, but justice always has the last word." Clara felt her world crumble. For the first time, she understood that her arrogance and hatred had triggered a reaction she could never control. Derek, who had witnessed everything, finally breathed a sigh of relief. The truth was out, and his dignity was saved. Clara Whitmore's trial was swift but relentless. The evidence gathered by Marcus and Derek was irrefutable: videos, witnesses, and even the filmed attempts at manipulation in the warehouse. Clara, once self-assured and arrogant, was now silenced in court. The judge, impartial but firm, pronounced the sentence. For knowingly attempting to destroy the life of a young man on racial grounds and for manipulating evidence, you are sentenced to prison. Clara felt the ground give way beneath her feet. The hatred and arrogance that had guided her would now serve no purpose. She understood, too late, that her wickedness had come at a price. Derek, cleared of all charges, stood beside his father as they left the courthouse. General Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Life can be cruel, Derek, but your strength and integrity have allowed the truth to prevail." The young man smiled, his heart light. He knew that this ordeal had transformed him, and that nothing and no one could ever again question his dignity. In the weeks that followed, Derek and Marcus rebuilt their lives. Derek resumed his studies, more determined than ever, while Clara, behind bars, had plenty of time to reflect on the consequences of her actions. The lesson was clear: hatred and racism can lead to destructive acts, but truth and justice always prevail in the end. The bag, now emptied of all threat, symbolized the triumph of truth over treachery. Derek knew that his life would go on, but with strengthened inner strength and a conviction: no injustice would go unpunished as long as there were men like his father to uphold the truth.